Hello again. This has been his Kurt Cross talking today for Deliberate Indifference, Wisconsin. We're going to talk about Act 10. At least that's the headline. The bottom line is that there are just too many tyrants that are allowed to walk free under these circumstances here. So let's just talk about what we're talking about. Wrap it all up. So, if you may not know, uh, Wisconsin's Act 10 has been repealed, overturned, I should say, by a circuit court judge, which isn't that fantastic of a thing we'd like to see an appeals court or a circuit court, Supreme Court do it, but we're getting somewhere. The Act 10, for those of you who don't know, was sort of a surprise act, law that was put in place by Scott Walker and the new Republican state House majority at that point, more or less dissolving public sector unions. That we can say, um, taking all the power from them. Trying to think of like a word that's not like depriving somebody of their sexual organs. Um, and that was the nominal goal. Now, the legislation was written by Alec or one of those sort of, it was pre-written, ready to go. Somebody had it dusted off. Poof, we got a super majority or whatever we have. Boom, let's do it. That's what they did. Um, and but basically, wages are on the inflation, sort of what they say inflation is. And then everything else is at the dictate of the employer, and basically collective bargaining is not allowed. Right? So for some reason, and to get this passed, I would say it's not for some reason, they put police officers and firefighters, they made them exempt for that rule. Um, those other, there's a few others, but that's basically it. So the rule is overturned. The law is overturned basically on equal protection. That on the one hand, the government is there's no rational basis for the government to keep the firefighters protected on one hand and the not protect everybody else. And one of the things I thought was always, strange about that, I thought this was already done and decided by the Supreme Court that this argument was, done and dusted. But I that part I don't know. I have read enough of the decision to know, basically that it applies right now, and that they can't enforce Act 10, meaning that it's sort of a weird situation because these unions don't really exist anymore. Um, some of them held on and still exist and do things, as like the Milwaukee Teachers Union still exists as a fraction of itself. I mean, AFSCME still exists, but like people pay dues if they want to, and basically they can't do anything. Um, so people get the sense real quick that why are they paying their money to them? That goes down the spiral. Okay, so they're like, I think everybody's kind of in shock as to what is going on. Now, here is, I think, the big setup argument that I want to put across. This is Assembly Speaker Robin Voss, who I'm almost positive was the Assembly Speaker when this was put in place. Says that Act 10 has saved Wisconsin taxpayers more than $16 billion. And he said he looked forward to arguing for its re-implementation. I don't know where that quote comes from, but I'm quoting from an article from the ACLU by, I think it's just ACLU. Um, Now, there's a couple, I have to say that I just don't know anything, and that's not what this video is going to be about, is what is, how much money are they saving? Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. Um, I will put it like this. When they say saving $16 billion, what that means is we have not, we have reduced the amount of money paid to public sector workers, I don't know if it's over 10 years, by $16 billion. Um, what is that, 160 million a year? No math surgeon, right? Um, that doesn't sound like, I mean, I have no reason to know that number. That sounds like a significant amount of money, but that also sounds like a significant amount of power, wages, and everything taken out of the hands of uh, Wisconsin state employees. Now, is that warranted? I don't know. That's not what I'm going to get into. What I want to get into is that in so many circumstances here, when I get called in, and you've seen us use the law very creatively here to sort of enforce what little rights there are left to highlight as much as we can a lot of how the disaster of what's in place here. And I won't speak to the wage aspect, is what I'm saying. I will, and I will not discount that they're very likely connected, but I will speak to the due process. And I think that part, I think, is broken. I think the um, citizens of the state of Wisconsin, the taxpayers are actually are benefited when there's due process in place, and we do not allow good people, just for example, like Jeremy Miller, to be tossed aside. Um, or I mean, we could name many others to be taught. And that's a long story. To be tossed aside here um, at the whim of autocratic superintendents or um, really any autocratic bureaucrats. That's what I want to focus on. And the reason for that is that we want a heightened standard of we want the government employer to have to go through hoops, at least some, before they discharge a lot of these people that they are basically firing at will, who have done 20 years, 30 years worth of good, valuable service that the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin have put their money into and invested in. And that, I think, is the big problem here, is that we can't really trust the managers. That's why there's a I mean, that's why we had all these protections to begin with. Um, we can't really trust the managers to look out for the best interest of the taxpayer when it's totally within their power to just get rid of somebody because they don't like them, they're annoyed, whatever else. And you may say, hey, in private practice, that's one thing. We want people to do that, but again, the purpose why this is different and why we had public sector unions to begin with, and unionization and all of the grievances and arbitrations, we came up with that whole system, is because there was a problem that happened to begin with, right? And so much of what we discuss on this channel is things that were fixed and now are broken again. And that it's the amount of work that you've seen me have to do to cross-examine, to argue, to fight with these petty bureaucrats who's, I mean, I think, to be clear, that the other Germantown one is another perfect example of that with the overtime case. And the district, the business, the person who's making the decisions there is clearly doing things there her number one goal is to protect herself, in my opinion, and not to protect the taxpayers. And it's that arbitrary power, that the fact that that power to fire for any reason or no reason at all exists, is out there. Well, maybe, maybe what the way to put that is, I see, I'm not agreeing that I see what they're saying, but for at some point, that where we were at, there could be an argument made that that was too much, too many protections. But to go back to no protections and then basically leave the same motivations, because what you have is systems that were set up to maintain the test of time, and somebody comes in because you don't want, which is what I'm going to describe to have happening, which is what happens all the time. New school board comes in, new superintendent, a new warden, new whatever comes in and decides that they want to clean house because they don't like not just the people that were there, but the previous person, or any number of these reasons. We're losing out on all the experience, time, effort, education, the investment, once again, that we've put into these state employees, whether you like them or not. Why are we allowing these managers to fire these to deprive of this investment? And that, I think, is the big key thing here. We're all about due process. We're all about due process rights here. And I guess I'm clearly advocating for heightened due process rights for government employees to protect the taxpayer. I think that makes sense. So I also, because again, the facts that I have is under no protections. And let's just to test the theory here, you've got a psychopathic, bad actor, totally disingenuous, president who works at company X. Okay. Well, in theory, then everybody could go over and work for company Y. But the government more or less is a monopoly. And there's only so many, game wardens, da 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 da, traffic inspectors, cops, you name it. Okay. And many of them are legitimate public servants who are there to serve the public. And there's no doubt about it that there are, when you have robust protections in place, that people take advantage of that. But equally, no doubt about it, that in a system where anything goes, there will be bad actors who rise to the top and again deprive public of their investment. So, if I haven't repeated myself 3 times, you don't know Ben Hitchcock Cross and his style of argumentation, because it always takes 3 times to get it on in there. So, gosh, it's been a while. Negative 10 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever that is, 10, 10. Smokey is injured, got a front paw. I've got 5 dogs at the house, 2 of them 140 pounds. Uh, it's a whole thing. And I totally, totally admit that it's been a long time since I've rapped at you, but I really appreciate all of your support. I can't express to you how much it means. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We'll keep you informed.